Hey everyone, my name is Lizzie and today we'll be talking about what not to do when making white wine. First of all, we're gonna need the three main ingredients of making alcohol, which are a liquid, yeast, and sugar. And when you're using sugar, since you're making white wine, I would suggest to use white sugar because the slightest amount of color that you add into your batch will affect the color of your whole product. If you add too much yellow sugar, your white wine will look more yellowish. If you add brown sugar, it'll be darker. Therefore, we want to play it safe and add white sugar. However, white wine has a little golden look, and in order to achieve this golden look, you just have to add 1 teaspoon of yellow sugar. This is for a 1-gallon batch. Therefore, if you have a 5-gallon batch or more, you can add more yellow sugar in proportion. However, make sure it's roughly 98% white sugar and 2% yellow sugar in order for you to achieve the right color. Another option, since usually wine, how it's done by squishing grapes. And actually, the difference between making white wine and red wine is that when making red wine, we add the seeds, we add the skins, we add the stems. However, we remove the skins for the white wine because we don't want it to be red and the inside of the grape is white. I've mashed grapes recently. However, I tried to do it with green grapes. And in this case, I mashed the grapes with the skins and added the skins with the grapes. Therefore, the whole fruit as a whole, the inside of the grape and the outside of the grape. And this affected the color of the white wine. Therefore, I do not suggest to add the skins because the skins have a little green tone and it affected the color of the wine. It looks a little bit yellowish. I'm gonna show you, we have it right here. This is what the green grape white wine looks like. And it's a little on the dark side. I know that the yeast has not gone to the bottom yet. It's still floating inside the jar. However, once it reaches the bottom, it'll still be a little bit yellowish because of the skins. So that's one reason to avoid the skin. It's just a long process to remove all the little skin of each grape that you're mashing. In that case, what you can do is use juice. However, do not use juice with preservatives. So initially I use white cranberry juice and I have an example right here. This is what I use. It's delicious when drank alone with no alcohol. However, they have preservatives and it includes sulfites. Sulfites are preservatives that inhibit the yeast performance. And no wonder, I was wondering why every time I used cranberry juice, my fermentation would never reach the end and it would always stop midway. That's because when you see sulfites in juice, abort mission, do not use it for your homebrew. Once I figured out that sulfites were the culprit, I opted for preservative-free juice just to be safe. And this is what I have here. It's guava with preservative-free. I'm not sure if you see that. However, you're sure that there's going to be no preservatives interfering with the yeast. Although there are some preservatives that are fine to use with yeast that do not affect the yeast, and these are malic acid, and this represents the sourness of the juice. And you have this in fruits as well. And we also have ascorbic acid, which is a vitamin C. So if you see those two preservatives inside your homebrew, it is safe. You can still use it to make wine. And the proof is that I've used apple juice to make cider and it fermented all the way till the end. The preservatives did not affect the fermentation. So once we're done with the liquid, we have to add, as usual, the sugar and make sure that the sugar is dissolved inside your batch. Once it's at an optimal temperature, meaning 26 degrees roughly, you can add the yeast. And what I use is the same yeast as I use to make red wine. And it's EC1118, I have it here. This type of yeast, and it makes champagne as well. And this wine, what's good about it is that it ferments the alcohol all the way to the end. And it's pretty inexpensive. It comes in small packs. And for 1 gallon, I use half the pack of EC1118. I can also use yeast nutrients if I want to accelerate the rate of the fermentation and make the yeast work harder, work better, work faster. You can add yeast nutrients. However, this is not necessary if you live in a warm climate. When the yeast is in a warm environment, they tend to eat the sugar faster because they're more energized. Contrarily, when you're in a cold environment or when you put your jar inside a dark kitchen corner, for example, the yeast may act slower. In that case, they may eat the sugar at a slower rate and your alcohol will just take that much longer to be done. And fermentation usually takes 1, 2, or 3 weeks. However, if it's in a cold environment, it may take 4 to 6 weeks, even more, depending on the temperature. And just an FYI that we're talking about the temperature inside the jar when we're talking about 26 degrees Celsius. The outside environment affects the temperature inside the jar, but what's inside its liquid environment is what affects the yeast the most. So once we added the yeast and the yeast nutrients to your wash, which is made of white juice, so it could be water. However, you need a little acidity in your juice to replicate that white wine bitterness, that tannin flavor. You don't want to just use water, white sugar, and yellow sugar because it will not taste like white wine, believe me. And you shouldn't use juice that is too sweet, because once winemakers crush grapes with their feet, the grapes are not always sweet. They could be sour, and the sour makes your wine less flat. Therefore, if you want to add this, for example, this guava juice, I tried it and it's pretty sweet. You want to add a liquid that's clear, that's a little bit tart. Therefore, it includes malic acid. And to cut costs, you can always add water to dilute it. Just make sure that the overall tartness of your homebrew is noticeable. However, speaking of flavors, I've made a past batch with water and sugar alone. And when I tried it, I said, why does it not taste like wine? Surprise, surprise. I tried to add tannin powder inside my white wine. However, do not do this because I have a batch right here, saved it specifically for this video, and my white wine became brown. So this is because I added tannin powder, and tannin powder is brown. Therefore, no surprises here, but once you add brown tannin powder to your white wine, the color will change and this is no longer white wine. Therefore, avoid tannin powders when making white wine. Just stick to having your taste at the beginning of your home brew and before the fermentation ends. And in order to do so, you have to make sure that your taste at the beginning has a little bit of sourness and enough sugar. The sugar, why? Because you need more sugar to have a stronger alcohol content. When I made red wine, I find that I didn't add enough sugar and it tasted more sour than strong alcohol. Therefore, for white wine, I want to add more sugar and make sure that the starting gravity is roughly, I would say, around the green area here. And based on the hydrometer, this will give me table wine. The lower the liquid floats in the hydrometer, the stronger the alcohol will be. And the higher it is, the less alcohol it will be. So I prefer stronger wines, roughly around 12%. And you just have to make sure that it's not too low, because if it's too low, it can affect the taste. And if there's too much sugar, the yeast might get stressed and this will lead to off flavors. Therefore, you won't have good tasting wine either, but it'll have a weird taste that generally winemakers do not like. And if you want to book a class, the link is in the description below. We have different step-by-step instructions to make wine, whether it's white wine, red wine, or cider, or even beer. One more thing about adding grapes to white wine is that in the past I've added, this is unpopular as a fruit, but I've added banana into my alcohol and I did not remove it after a few days and the wash tasted rotten. So I just want to double check now, because I've made in between the banana and the grapes, in the middle, I made a blueberry wine and I did not have to remove the blueberry skins after a few days and it did not taste rotten. However, I'm kind of worried about these grapes inside my homebrew. I just want to make sure that the attempt to make white wine does not taste rotten. So we're going to try this here. And I will just open this up and try this liquid. It smells rotten. Let's see, using this turkey baster, how it's gonna taste. I just have to go through all the skins on top and reach the bottom where there's just liquid. Actually, looking at the color, it does look like white wine. Let's try more. Okay, I tried it. Yeah, it has a little hint of rot, but it's not disgusting. Therefore, I will have to remove these skins and just try it without any skins on top. And the rule of thumb is to remove the skins roughly 3 days after it starts fermenting, or else you'll have rotten fruit laying outside the fridge for weeks, and that is never good. And if you found this video valuable, share with a friend. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.